Hey everyone, it's Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. It's great being human, but you know what's better? Superhuman. Then this week we will give you examples of how you can use AI to become a superhuman investor.
Yes, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about this one. Using AI has become a big part of my week, and it genuinely does save me so much time, and it helps me make better decisions. And we're going to be sharing it in this episode, the exact uses we've been making of AI, how we do it, and some pretty advanced tips that I don't think you're going to hear anywhere else, all in the service of making you a better property investor.
So it's time for our news story of the week right now, and you know what? The weather over the last few weeks, months, some would argue years, hasn't been that great in the UK. And many of us will be turning our thoughts to summer holidays and the warmth on our skin. But that's not good news for holiday lets in the UK. According to The Guardian, and the headline reads, Rob, Britain's staycation boom may be over as bookings dry up.
That's right. And the headline kind of gives it away. The story is holiday lets are struggling. And that's for two reasons. One is because there's much more competition than there used to be. So many new holiday lets have sprung up over the last few years. And the other is demand. People are not wanting to holiday as much in the UK as they did when it was, frankly, their only choice. There's a quote from a holiday let operator in here that says, so many people are fed up with the wet weather. They're going abroad to get some sunshine. The second big factor is the massive oversupply of holiday lets. A lot of people thought they could make easy money because of what happened during COVID. And this is borne out by a few people who I've actually spoken to who operate holiday lets who are saying something very similar. So for me, Rob, not hating on holiday lets as a general concept, no problem with them at all. But this to me, Rob, feels like one of those things that fits into the category of things that happened during COVID that were supposed to change the world forever, but actually didn't. People were meant to realise how great it was to holiday in the UK, but actually when the rest of the world is on offer as well, it's not quite so appealing.
Yes, the globe is quite a big marketplace. I still like to do both, as many of us listening will, holiday in the UK and overseas. So there's absolutely a place for holiday lets. This reminds me a bit of actually student lets, where competition increased, albeit a different type of competition here, but increased competition plus potentially more regulation coming into this area. I think the best will survive and do quite well. I just think it's the casual operators who just wanted to make some quick money. They'll disappear. So I think there'll be an adjustment to that supply and demand balance over time. I don't think it's going to be like a light switch and it's on and off. But I think over time, as it gets harder, which it already seems to be happening, I think more people will fall away from the market. But in this article, it gives an example of the supply-demand issues. Scarborough in North Yorkshire used to have 200 Airbnbs on the market, and now there's over 1,000.
Oh, wow.
So it shows you the oversupply issues that exist now, and that, as you've rightly pointed out, Rob, was driven by that boom after COVID. So is this the death of holiday lets? Far from it, but is it the easy times are over? It seems so. And I think the professionals will continue, persevere, and then prosper. And I think the amateurs or the lazy or the ones who can't be bothered or the ones who've just picked the wrong areas will move on. And I think that's natural. I think that happens in a lot of markets. You see a particular sector boom, everyone piles in for the gold rush, and then it calms down and the best survive. That's typical. That's normally what happens. And it's absolutely what's playing out here.
We've spoken about AI, artificial intelligence, on this show before, not long after ChatGPT first came out and everyone was really getting excited about AI for the first time. And at that point, it would have been easy to roll your eyes and think of AI as just another fad. And if you haven't been paying attention, maybe you still think that's the case because you're not reading about it in the news every day in the same way as you were. And it is possible now to have a conversation without someone mentioning ChatGPT. But even though the hype has died down a little bit, AI, I think, has proved itself to be the real deal. And while not everyone is using it, far more people than I thought would be by this time are, which means if you're not using AI at the moment, you're falling behind. But Rob, even of those large number of people who are using AI, not a great proportion of those, I would say, are using it to like an intermediate plus kind of level. So that's what we want to do in this episode. If you're just using it for the absolute basics, or maybe not using it at all, we're going to level up your AI game by giving you not just some general tips to use, but some specific uses that we have personally put it to in recent weeks that I think will get you very excited about what it can do for you.
Yes, buckle up, everyone, because Rob and I are big on AI. I don't think that enthusiasm is going away. In fact, the more we see, the more we're doing with AI. And to begin with, if you need to pay, and pay not us, but actually ChatGPT, and get ChatGPT-4, pay for it. It's $20 a month. But you will get the value back in a handful of interactions. It is so good. Uploading documents and having it analysed, something we'll talk about in a moment, but that alone for me is worth every penny and more. I hope they're not listening, and they've probably got AI tools to listen to all podcasts, but I would happily pay double, triple for what they charge. It's so good. Do it. Don't be tight. If you take property, productivity, your career, your business, whatever, seriously, then for $20, I can't understand why you wouldn't do it. It's well worth every penny. So first of all, that's the groundwork. Go and sign up for ChatGPT-4. There's no affiliate links. We're not sponsored. We believe it will help you. So now we've said that, because you'll need that for some of the things we've talked about. Rob, we have to also explain there's more than just ChatGPT. That's the big one. That's the one that most people know and sort of understand. But there are other models out there that you can use, and you can use them for different things.
That's right. So ChatGPT is not AI in the same way that Facebook is not the internet. It's one place that a lot of people spend a lot of time, but there are other tools out there. I'd say ChatGPT is the best all-rounder. It's the place that I always start because it does a pretty decent job of most things, especially if you pay, because then not only is it far better at writing type tasks, but its knowledge cutoff, I think, is more recent, and it can actually access the live internet, which overcomes one of the main limitations of the free versions. But just like you don't open up your toolbox and pick out the hammer by default every time, there are other tools that you can use. So one that I've been using increasingly recently is Claude. Claude as in the name, Claude.ai. And this has had a big upgrade in recent weeks that has made a huge difference. So now if I'm doing anything to do with writing, so I want it to give a form of written output that I can then use for something or use as the basis for something, I'll go to Claude, because for me, it's streets ahead of ChatGPT. So if you use AI a lot, you'll start to recognize AI writing when you see it. If you spend any time on LinkedIn, you will see people who have clearly just pasted something ChatGPT gave it. It's so awful. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. You should be using it as the basis for your writing, but you can be more lazy if you use Claude because it's better in the first place. You can also feed it larger documents. So all models are getting better than this, but you can give Claude a giant PDF or Word document as context, and it'll have the memory effectively to take all of that in and give you answers based on it. And then the final one of the big three is Gemini from Google, used to be called Bard. This, I think, is still the best for pulling live information. So if you want to know what's going on in the news, or it's something related to a topic that literally changes week by week, then Gemini is a good place to go. Also, unsurprisingly, very good at Google's own products. So if you try to figure out how to do something in Docs or Google Sheets or Google Ads or whatever it is, then it shouldn't be a shock that Gemini gives you the best tutorials there. So to summarize, Rob, I would always go to ChatGPT for probably like 70, 80% of my queries, but it's always worth having a knowledge of all these different tools so you can then pick out the right one for the job.
It is, but just picking a good model doesn't mean you're going to get good answers. And actually, the first answer you get from AI, I feel at least, is often disappointing. And that's because the prompts I've given haven't been good enough in the beginning. This is where you need to step in and you need to use your brain and your creativity. Because if you're lazy with your prompting, and prompting is the questions that you ask the AI model, if you ask a lazy question, you'll often get a lazy answer or a very generic answer. Now, it's okay to start with a very generic question. But when the first answer comes back and it's not quite right, you don't give up. And I think a lot of people do. And it's about going back and forth with AI until you get something of value. So to give you an example, I was analysing a medical report for a friend, and it was difficult to know what to ask. And the first few prompts didn't get me anywhere. So I asked, in this case, ChatGPT, to give me the questions that they would ask a medical professional if they had this documentation. And it gave me 10 really, really good questions. Well, what did I do? I fed them back into the model and said, please answer these 10 questions. Now, a word of warning, I'm not saying use AI as your medical professionals, that I just wanted to get some insight and I was struggling to get it by the prompting I was using. So in effect, I asked the AI model, what is the best prompting? And it gave me it. So play around with it, persist. Don't just accept what comes out at the beginning. Work back and forward like you would with a colleague if you're brainstorming something. But what you will get back will improve and improve, and your prompting in general will improve.
That's right. But however good your prompting, sometimes AI is lazy. It happens to all of us. It happens to AI as well. And this is basically because all these models use so much computational power that they're really expensive to run. That's why if you're paying, then you get a better standard, you get a model that's more expensive to run, and it tends to be more resilient. But even if you do, there are basically times where I don't understand the technicalities, but they tweak the models to reduce their power and give you lazier answers. So something where previously it might have given you a few like really well-reasoned paragraphs and a load of detail, it'll just give you a line or two. If that happens, it comes back to what Rob was saying a minute ago. You don't have to accept it. And this goes against every one of my instincts and the whole way that I was raised. But you don't have to be polite to AI. I know, it's shocking. And in fact, the most recent research actually shows that politeness, saying please and thank you, makes the output worse. It's just, unfortunately, it's a bit like real life, where the most demanding people tend to get the attention. I've had responses before where it's just not good enough, and I've got a bit frustrated with it, and I've just gone back and said, this isn't good enough, or do that again, this is rubbish. And it's come back with something far better. So if you encounter it on a day when it's in lazy mode, so if you start out lazy, you're in lazy mode, you give it a poor prompt, it gives you a poor answer, then do what Rob said and work your way through that, improve it over time within that conversation. But if you feel like you've done a decent job and AI is just having a lazy day, then you don't have to accept that. And sometimes if you're a bit blunt, you can force it to give you what you want.
So that's general advice on how to operate these AI models. But let's get into specific user cases now. Let's give you the stuff that you can start using after this episode has finished. And the first one I'm going to kick off with is reviewing contracts. So I've talked about medical report before. You can do this with any type of like heavy information. You upload it to the AI model, and then you get the AI to give you an opinion. So recently for one of our team members, I uploaded a contract pack related to a property purchase. I put that in. It had a few covenants on there that looked a bit iffy, and I got the AI to give its opinion. I gave it prompts that proved to be really helpful. So things like, after reading this contract, what questions should I be asking my solicitor? That type of prompting will help you get really good information out. It will save you so much time as well, because some of those contracts in property are pretty meaty. So quickly feeding it into an AI model will be really helpful. Start using this today. Honestly, it's brilliant. It's crazy if you don't start using it. It's such a powerful tool. So start taking advantage of it. But we've got loads more, Rob. What else have we got?
Yeah, something I use it for all the time is helping me out with spreadsheets. So I can never remember the formulas for certain different things. I can never manage to put a pivot table together correctly on the first try. I'm always basically just using trial and error about where stuff goes. I used to have to Google it, like find the formula, and then take the references in that basic formula and adapt it for my spreadsheet and go, oh yeah, but it's not in A1, it's in C3. Don't have to do that anymore. I've got this spreadsheet. The data is in this column. Write me a formula for that column that does blah. And it'll do it. But you can take this a step further and have it build out an entire spreadsheet for you. So we get contacted all the time, ask if you've got a spreadsheet for analysing a property deal. As it happens, you can get that for free by going to propertyhub.net/tools. But if you wanted your own, with the right prompting, you could work through the whole process. So you can go like, I want to analyse residential property deals. What should I be looking for? What numbers matter? What are the most important 3 ratios that professionals look for? Got to get all this information and then get it to actually build the spreadsheet out for you. Then all you have to do is go and paste everything into the right cells. And I'd say in many ways, that's actually better than just getting a template from somewhere, because you've been involved in building it. You've been intellectually engaged with it. You understand what it is, what it does, and the reasoning behind it, but you haven't had to do all the boring technical work of remembering formulas. So I think a lot of people are scared of spreadsheets and formulas and things like that, so they just don't even try. But this gives you all the benefits without having to do any of the learning.
Another fantastic way to use AI is help you build your strategy out or your plans. So here's an example of how it works. So I've typed into AI a very basic prompt, not that good, which says, help me build a plan to invest in property in Manchester, England. I live in London. I've not given it a lot of information there. It's a really, really poor prompt. However, it's laid out a plan for me. And it's given me 10 points to work on and started to break down the points a little bit. And you'll find this with AI. When you ask it for a plan, it'll give you points and they're numbered. So the first one is research the Manchester property market. Now, what I would do now is take the information it's given me on number 1 and say, build out a plan for section 1. And then you start to expand it out. And then when you've done that, you may expand that one out further. But then for number 2, set your investment goals. That's a good part of your plan, right? That makes sense. Put that in and say, help me build out the plan for setting my investment goals. So don't just take the initial plan, which based off a very poor prompt was pretty good. Then go in and build the plan out with the framework it's given you. You don't have to stop at the high level information it's given. Go in and carry on building it out. Remember, the quality of your prompting will improve the quality of the information. Don't just take what you're given in the beginning. Keep building on it.
Another one that's great for if you're trying to learn something new is to give it some kind of input, such as in the form of an article that you've read, and ask it to simplify that article and explain it to you. So I shouldn't admit this because I've written a book about the economy, but sometimes I'll come across articles in the FT or in Bloomberg, whatever, and there'll be a section of that article where I just do not understand what they're talking about. And so I'll take that article, paste it in, and ask it to break it down. And you can tweak the output with your prompt. So if you ask it to explain it to you like a 5-year-old, it'll normally give you some analogy to do with toys or whatever. But if you feel more confident in yourself, you can go for 10-year-old. Sometimes I'll say like GCSE level. If it goes too basic or too complex, you can change your prompt to kind of get it at the level you understand. And then, of course, you can ask follow-up questions. So it might then still use something you don't quite understand. So ask it to explain that. And then you can check your understanding. So I will then sometimes try and paraphrase it back. So if I'm understanding this correctly, if that is true, then that means blah, 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 blah. Is that right? Then it'll either say that's right, or it'll say, yeah, that's broadly right, but you've missed something or other. So the great thing there is you've started from just like a paragraph or two of text and you've turned it into an interactive lesson of the type that you'd have with a tutor. So for using it for something super complex like the economy, obviously that's perfect, but you can use it for pretty much anything you want to learn. And it's like having your own specialist tutor right there.
You know what, Rob, I'm thinking of Ray Dalio's blogs. They are pretty heavy going. Yeah. And if you don't have a solid economics background, it can be tricky to understand. I've found myself rereading his blogs a few times just to help it all sink in. But I'll probably do what you've said now moving forward. That's a great tip. Another one I'm sure a lot of you are going to like is having your own mentor. We get asked a lot, do you need a mentor? And our standard advice is no, in most cases you don't, or not what you would consider a formal mentor. But maybe you could have an AI mentor and use AI as your sounding board. One of the things you can do with the app on your phone is use voice chat. And you can tell the AI to be your property investment mentor and you want to run through some questions with them to help you make a better decision. That works. You could do that. You can do it for other things as well. So if you have other interests in life and you want some mentoring or you want a sounding board, then you can use this tool as well. It's super cool. I don't think many people are using this. So try it. Don't just use AI on your desktop. Use it on your mobile phone as well. And use the voice feature.
Yeah, for stuff where you're trying to reason something through, speaking it is actually easier than typing it. So you will give better input as a result of doing that. And you can get it to summarize the conversation for you at the end, give you follow-up points, all that good stuff. And while we're talking about voice, something that I've been doing absolutely loads recently is dictating. So this isn't a ChatGPT thing, but the same company, OpenAPI, has something called Whisper API, which is basically its voice recognition model. And it is so much better than anything else you've ever used. So voice recognition on the iPhone is terrible. If you use the transcription that's built into Teams, that's pretty bad. Historically, automated voice recognition has not been particularly good. But the Whisper API is phenomenal. And I know from talking to people, even who speak English with quite a strong accent of some kind, find that it understands them perfectly. So you can speak into it and end up with something that's perfect that you can just take and paste somewhere else. So getting it set up is semi-technical because you need to get an API key, you need to do a few things, but we'll link in the show notes to a couple of things that I've been using. One is a browser plugin. So in Chrome, I've just got a button that I can hit. I can talk into it, hit stop, then it pastes that text into my browser window. That saves a bunch of time. And I've also got an iPhone shortcut. We'll link to that as well. So now I tap the shortcut, I talk into it, I hit stop, then I've got text that I can paste into an email, into WhatsApp, into whatever. And it also goes the other way. So if you've got someone who sent you a long voice note and you can't be asked to listen to it, you can put that in there and it'll go back to text for you instead. So of course, because talking is so much faster than typing, especially on a phone, that's been a game changer for me.
Rob, that's brilliant. That's one I'm not using, but will be using later today. That is fantastic. And hopefully you will be using some of these tools now. And you know what? You don't have to use them all. You don't have to do everything we've just gone through. But pick a couple. Just start. And it's making AI a habit, Rob. I think that's what people need to take away from this. Yes, us giving examples is exciting and useful, I'm sure. But the overall point we're trying to hit home here is use it. Make AI a habit. Most people, when they're working, won't start with AI. And we're saying, maybe you should. Not for every task, but the majority. AI can help you. And by making AI a habit, your productivity levels are going to rocket.
That's right. And I think a way to implement this, a really easy starting point, is just to catch yourself every time you're about to Google something. And instead of Googling it, try ChatGPT instead. So a lot of people, me included, we're in the habit of turning to Google quite quickly rather than trying to remember something or figure something out. But if you're about to do that and you start using ChatGPT instead, you'll often notice that the answers you get are so much better. And that will build that habit in you. And so you can then start thinking, oh, well, what else can I use this for? So silly example, I was having an issue with my form on a particular movement in the gym. And it's the kind of thing where I'd normally Google it and you get a load of results come up and you click on it and then you'd be trying to watch it and then a pop-up would come up and you try and find the bit in the middle of this article somewhere that has the actual bit you want. ChatGPT, it just gave me a fantastic answer straight away with none of the nonsense. And of course, I could answer follow-up questions right there as well. And because I was using Whisper voice recognition, I could do it between sets because it hardly took any time. So my Google usage has absolutely plummeted. I'm sure I'm using it like 20% of what I was before. So if you can do the same thing, turn to AI instead of search, I think you'll be amazed by what you can do.
If you think we're done with the value, no, not yet. I'm about to give you a Hub Extra, which really complements everything that we've discussed today. But before I do, I'm going to reach over with my robotic AI engineered hand. Not really. It's still me. It's still virtual, but we still want your support. Remember, we will keep doing this show for free. All we ask in return is for your support. And that can be shown in a few different ways. So to start with the easy stuff, leave a nice review on iTunes, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then the stuff that really helps is sharing the podcast. Share it with other people. It's not just property that we cover. Yes, today's episode will help you in your property world, but also help you, hopefully, in your retire world. So if you've got anyone who's got a vague interest in property investment or economics, then pass them the pod. They might become converted just like you. Thank you for your support. I'm shaking your virtual hand now. And as promised, I will deliver you a Hub Extra. Short and sweet, but if you want to keep on top of what's happening, and I think you should with AI, then a way of doing this beyond the podcast is YouTube. And not our own YouTube channel, but I'm going to give you a YouTube channel that I follow that helps me keep up to date with what's happening in the world of AI, and it's called The AI Advantage. The videos are to the point, great information, shows visual examples of how they can be used. I watch those videos every few weeks and I feel like I get back up to speed every time I do. So check out that YouTube channel and I'm sure you will benefit as well.
I'm sure you will. Well, that is us done for another week. Hope you're feeling suitably inspired and ready to have an even more productive week than you would have done previously. We, of course, have got 2 more podcasts coming up for you next week, as we always do. So we'll see you back here for that. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.